one's dumb enough to go where we're going.
That's kind of our specialty. Hang on! Let's go.
Rated PG-13.
Yes, Anaheim, California has been our home for a great night of fights this evening, broadcast live for you from DAZN, the Honda Center, usually the home of the NHL's Anaheim Ducks. Tonight, though, boxing, and Jake Paul and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. took center stage in this one. Jake Paul, the winner this evening, back in his locker room already. He'll have a night of celebration ahead of him. Easy work is what he said. Certainly, according to the scorecard, it was easy work this evening. Very warm welcome, everybody, to Beyond the Well. Kate Scott, Ariel Helwani. What do you make of it?
Well, I think when Julio Cesar Chavez goes to sleep tonight, he's going to be filled with regret.
Right.
He started way too slow. You saw he had success in those final 3 rounds. Probably won 2 out of the last 3. I don't understand why he was so inactive the early portion of this fight. And it wasn't, Jake fought fine in those rounds, but it wasn't like he was throwing this like really hard puzzle to figure out. He just wasn't doing anything, and he's going to regret it. Jake won the fight fair and square. The good news for Jake, he got 10 rounds under his belt. He was able to go to the distance. I thought he should have tried to at least try to, get rid of him early on, especially when there was no activity. But in the end, I think the guys have it pretty spot on. B plus, somewhere in that range for Jake Paul.
I mean, you did ask Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., do you want to fight again?
Yeah.
He said yes. Do you think there is appetite for that, or was this the final chance?
I think this is the final sort of main event hurrah for him. I don't know if he gets these types of fights, these types of stages. Maybe MVP brings him back on an undercard. I don't know how big the appetite there is for a JCC Jr. fight at this point.
So if the Chavez Jr. performance was that disappointing, how do you qualify the Jake Paul win? How do we know kind of how to quantify that?
Well, you'll recall that I predicted a 6th or 7th round TKO. So that's why, I mean, I thought Jake should have, I thought he should have put him away. And look, I don't think he did anything horribly wrong. I mean, I think it was a solid performance. He threw a lot of punches. I think it was in the 482 range. He was way more active early on. The jab looked fine. The power punches looked fine. The knock on Jake in the past has been the lack of activity. That wasn't really the case, especially early. The low blow complaints weren't really a thing.
Right.
But the knock on him has been the conditioning, and we saw him lose those rounds in the back half. Maybe 8 or 10, something like that. So he has to continue to work on that. I agree with Chris. And overall, I think he's probably pretty pleased with his performance, but I don't think he's over the moon.
Kind of seemed angry in the post-fight
He was very
interview.
short with his questions.
Yeah.
Not really sure what that's about, but I think that it's very interesting that he didn't say Tank Davis's name. That's been the highly rumored fight.
Yes, but why are we talking about him fighting Tank Davis?
It's not even that. They're talking about it. We're not talking about it. If Tank Davis would have beaten Lamont Roach, that fight was happening. Tank Davis was the plan B after the Canelo fight didn't come to fruition. I don't know what the appetite is for that, but I thought it was interesting that he didn't bring him up. And let me be very clear before the comments come after me. I am not sitting here or standing here advocating for this fight. I'm just telling you the truth about what's happening behind the scenes. He mentioned Zurdo. He mentioned Badu Jack. He mentioned Anthony Joshua. That's not Julio Cesar Chavez. That's not Mike Tyson. That's not an MMA fighter. Those are guys who are kind of in their primes. Joshua may be back in, but you get the point.
Right.
Who knows? It would be interesting, but I don't see him fighting Zurdo or Badu next, or even a Jayo Pataya.
Who do you see him fighting next? What is the right level fight?
This is the big question. Honestly, if Tank wins in August, I see them trying to make that fight. Now, he did mention Tommy Fury. Let me ask you, do you have an appetite in that one? That's the one, right? You're a Brit.
The Tommy Fury
do you want to see? Do you want to see Love Island boy come back? It's so hot right now. Everyone's
not
talking about
Love Island fan.
Okay.
Never watched an episode of Love Island.
Neither
actually.
have I, but every day I see people talking about it now.
So
What's happening?
Maybe we should be watching.
We should be watching. Do you want to see that rematch? Are you interested?
No, if I'm honest. But I'm also not interested in seeing Jake Paul fight Gervonta Tank Davis. I think if Jake Paul is going to keep insisting, hey, I'm a legitimate fighter, you have to take me seriously, I've won my stripes, then we can't be talking about a fight against Gervonta Davis. We have to be looking at the cruiserweight division and looking at who are the right opponents to move him up eventually to that world title shot that he so wants.
Yeah, because sometimes he talks about those top contenders or champions, and then sometimes he talks about Tommy Fury and Tank Davis, so it's kind of mixed messages. I think there is some sort of interest in the Tommy Fury fight in that we'll get a chance to see how far he's come since then.
Fair point, yeah.
Tommy has kind of fallen off, as the kids like to say, as of late. His last performance was not very impressive, and he hasn't been very active. I'll tell you one sort of like off the beaten path name that could be of interest, and that's Darren Till, the former UFC fighter who has now crossed over to boxing. I think that would be an interesting one. And then there's the big one, Kate. Let's be honest. If some way, somehow, the brass at MVP and the brass at Misfits can finally figure this KSI Jake Paul thing out, it would sell out Wembley, would it not?
Yes,
it would sell out Wembley. And it is so ironic to me that all these guys, these influencers, came together to reignite boxing because they said the big fights weren't being made. And in 2025 in boxing, the big fights are being made. And it's the influencers who aren't making the fights. The influencers are acting like Pacquiao and Mayweather from years ago. Make the damn fight, stop teasing us, or stop talking about each other, because it's been 5 years of this nonsense. Maybe that's the answer. KSI Jake, they're arguing over 1 pound, for goodness sakes. Enough of this already. Make the damn fight and let's move on.
All right, let's go over to the guys ringside. What do you think? Is that the fight that you guys want to see? Is it KSI?
Well, let me tell you, to our American audience, maybe KSI isn't that big over here, but he's as big or bigger in England than Jake Paul is here in America. I just feel personally that Jake Paul has gotten too good for KSI. He's not dedicated like Jake Paul is. He's not, he's more of a promoter. He's got his social media channels going on. I just don't think he's at the level as Jake Paul is, and I don't think Jake Paul wants to cut down to 185 or whatever it is to have that fight.
I think he would if it was, 190, whatever the final number that they would settle on. And that is a big fight, a big money fight, certainly, over in the UK. And I got to say, that's the lens you have to look at Jake Paul through. He is not going to fight like Unesky Gonzalez, who I think you were alluding to off camera, just because that might get him better prepared for a world title fight. He is going to go for the biggest money fights, and why wouldn't he? Antonio, you were a fighter, great fighter for a long time. If you could fight someone like Chavez Jr. and collect 7 figures, you would do it. Sergio's washed up butt is in the building somewhere. If he could fight Jake Paul right now, he would do it. Like you are fighting for dollars here. You're not fighting for respect necessarily. Jake Paul got a good win, he got a good payday, and now he and his team will go back to the drawing board and find out what the most lucrative option out there is for him.
For me, I always wanted to get my lick back. If somebody beat me, they had to fight me again. And I think if Jake Paul goes and fight Tommy Fury and get that win back, knock him out, I think that can also propel him to the next level.
Yeah, Tommy Fury, decent boxing skills. I know he won his last fight. That's a pretty competitive fight, maybe 50-50. The first fight, I believe, was a split decision. I personally would like to see that fight, have it take place over in England. Let's get it on. But Chris, give me a name. You're poo-pooing everybody, but give us the guy you want to see him fight next.
I have no issue with a rematch with Tommy Fury if that's the wave that Jake Paul wants to go. 3 guys that are top by potential most likely next list. KSI, of course, we discussed. Gervonta Davis, look, Jake Paul told me a couple of weeks ago that they had a promotional video ready to go if Gervonta Davis had beaten Lamont Roach. That fight was signed, sealed, and delivered. It would have been a little goofy given the size disparity, but it was good. And if Jake wants to go for a world title, Badou Jack is out there. No disrespect to Badou Jack, but he is probably the weakest of the 3 champions that are at the top, in part because he's the oldest of the 3 champions that's on top. So if Jake wants to go for that type of fight, or a championship level fight, Badou Jack to me is the most likely option. He's also the WBC title holder, and that's one of the sanctioning bodies that may rank Jake after this fight.
He didn't say Jai Opetaia. He doesn't want any part of Jai Opetaia. Right? That's just like, stay away.
Right.
Not Jai Opetaia. Let's talk about our co-main event tonight. Zurdo Ramirez started a little slow, but came on strong to defeat Dorticas. What do you want to see next from Zurdo? I'm assuming you would like him and Jai Opetaia next.
That would be a big fight. I like the movement. He's going to have to get a little bit more craftier with his feet, and he's going to have to load up on some power. He's going to have to get stronger if he's going to want to, keep a guy like Opetaia at bay, because this guy is punching hard.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good performance from Zurdo, but I also like to see when he gets back in the gym, maybe do the ab roller a little bit more. I mean, like he's just a little fleshy right there. Right. This is a guy that came up from 168, 175. I'd like to see him do a little bit more work. Look, he got the job done. Dorticos was a live dog coming into this fight. Landed a few low blows there in the second half of it. But Zurdo turned on the gas when he needed to, landed the big shots when he had to, and got the job done. But this, to me, was a B-ish level performance. I just look at Zurdo's body there, and I feel like he can do better. I feel like he can get stronger.
You don't feel like he was in tip-top shape by looking at his physique.
It didn't look like it. Look, there are great options up there for Zurdo Ramirez. Jaya Pataya is the fight that everybody is talking about. Turki Al-Sheikh has talked about making that fight. That's a huge fight in Saudi Arabia. Also, Badu Jack in Saudi Arabia would be a big event. Oscar De La Hoya is the one talking about David Benavidez. Right now, David Benavidez is 175-pound title holder, but if he moved up to cruiserweight, an all-Mexican showdown between Zurdo and David Benavidez, two fight-the-phone booth type of guys, that would be an action-packed event that would do a big number in Las Vegas, Southern California, even New York.
All right, so that's the story from our co-main and our main event, but the star of the show had to be the first fight of the night. Floyd Schofield stunning everybody, most notably Tevin Farmer with this KO just seconds in, Antonio.
I mean, perfectly placed, timing, and I knew this was possible. You know, I thought Tevin Farmer was going to come in, at least get out of the first 2-3 rounds to allow himself the opportunity to make some things tough for Schofield, but it wasn't to be. Everything landed. That kid showed the power and devastation that we was.
Then the second fight of the night, we saw a KO in the last round, Chris.
Yeah, a tremendous performance from Julian Rodriguez, coming in as the underdog, as the B-side. This was supposed to be the Avius Griffin show. Julian Rodriguez flipped the script on Avius Griffin, getting a knockout with 5 seconds left in the final round of this fight. Brilliant performance for Julian Rodriguez.
And then Raul Curiel, El Cougar, just beat down his Uruguayan opponent. Looked like he might have even fractured his orbital bone, a shot we could hear ringside.
Yeah, it was perfectly placed. And I thought Rodriguez was going to come in and give a few more challenging rounds, but it wasn't to be. Not tonight.
So 3 straight knockouts to stop the show, and then a Jake Paul dominating victory to close it out. For Chris, Antonio, I'm Todd Grisham. So long from us from ringside. We send it back upstairs to Kate and Ariel.
Thank you. Great job, guys. Just to mop up what they were saying there, I guess, should we give some props to Golden Boy and to MVP for the matchmaking on the card tonight? Because to see those first 3 fights particularly end the way they did 100%. Made it feel like we got some evenly matched fights 100%, tonight.
And I'm happy that they're highlighting them. First of all, great to see 2 promotions working together. They don't have a history of working together, so that's good for the sport. And second of all, I've had the privilege of being at a lot of these MVP events. Those first 3 fights, I think, were some of the best action that we've ever seen on one of these MVP cards, and they're worth noting and highlighting because, as the guys were kind of saying, Jake has moved really far away from the influencer game. These aren't influencers.
Right.
You know what I mean? These are.
It's not an influencer card.
It's not an influencer card. We have, you know, in the early days of the MVP cards, there was the odd Frank Gore versus Darren Williams, NFL versus NBA fight. There was the odd influencer guy.
Right.
That doesn't exist anymore. And so, again, to anyone who likes to say that Jake is bad for boxing or that MVP and Nikisa are bad for boxing, what is your reason? They're highlighting and giving the biggest platform possible to women. They're creating new stars. They're only building up people. There's nothing literally that you could say as far as a negative. Now, if you may not like his fights or his matchmaking, fine. But you look at the rest of the roster, the way these cards are built, to me, it's just an added bonus to the sport right now.
Team MVP, are we?
Not team MVP, but let's call it like it is. I mean, those fights were legit. Why do you have to? This is okay. My name's not Micah Richards, all right, Kate? I'm not going to take your stick, all right? By the way, can someone get Kate a jacket? She literally has hypothermia.
You've been wearing a jacket all night. You never offered it.
Yeah, I know, but your husband's right over there. I'm not doing that. I don't want his smoke. The great Malik, and congratulations to Malik for his guy Zurdo winning.
Yeah, the whole team at Brickhouse Boxing.
But aren't you freezing right now? Because I am.
It's a little cold. It's a little nippy in here. Yesterday there was no air conditioning. Today, for some reason, it's blasting.
Yes. Golly, it's blasphemous.
It's been fun to be with you. Thanks for the coverage.
It is an absolute pleasure. I look forward to doing it again in about 18 or so months. That's usually our cadence. We get to work together.
That's how popular we are, everybody. Yes. We'll be back by popular demand in a couple of years. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. Don't forget, Ring Magazine 3.